The night smelled of damp earth and wet moss. The wind rustled the heavy curtains. Silence thickened under the arches of the old palace. Let us reveal the shocking truth about the fall of the rightful heir. Who could have imagined that behind the brilliance of golden domes and the lush silks of the imperial court lay dark intrigues capable of shaking the greatest empire of antiquity? Official court records stated without fail that 16-year-old Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, the only legitimate son of Emperor Septimius Severus, was to appear before the Senate on the 15th day of March, 1904, to receive power. But the night of the 14th of March came, and the heir mysteriously vanished in the labyrinths of the palace's lavish halls. Behind the facade of impeccable order lay letters that chilled the blood. The younger twin brother, born in Lugdunum in 1808, Lucius Septimius Jatta, wounded by feelings of injustice and feudal ambition, had been plotting since childhood to overthrow his brother in order to seize the throne for himself. His carefully prepared conspiracy involved not only selling Marcus into sexual slavery, but also destroying evidence hidden in secret tunnels beneath the palace, dug by the emperor's grandfather for emergency evacuation. Instead of fleeing through them, the conspirators directed the heir to the bustling market of Subura, where, at Jetta's command, the influential slave owner Marcus Brutus Corbus, having received 500,000 golden denarii from him, secretly purchased the boy and ensured him an invitation into a ship's hold loaded with crates of Egyptian wine, into which a powerful sedative had been mixed. Corbus, whose trade routes stretched from Alexandria to Ostia, trusted only his hired sailors and secret agents, among whom were the sinister night dogs, former gladiators trained in a secret language of gestures and codes. None of the imperial guard felt how the shielded doors of the underground corridor slowly closed, slammed shut from the inside. Everyone believed Marcus's disappearance was the flight of a cynic or the whim of a young prince, forgetting even to check the heir's bedroom until morning. The townspeople, waking to the aroma of fresh bread, whispered about strange, noisy loadings at the docks and mysterious caravans racing eastward. Senators, upon learning of Marcus's voluntary departure, rushed to the sacred walls of the Temple of Jupiter, where they fervently debated the legitimacy of the new candidate, unaware that discontent was already breathing in the darkness, ready to explode the ancient foundations. The tutors of the young heir, who kept mirrored desks with secret scrolls under the arches, tried to find confirmations, but each inquiry turned into a confrontation with silence and records altered to suit the official narrative. Meanwhile, Marcus, finding himself in the hold of a slave ship, displayed remarkable intelligence and charisma, earning the trust of the other captives and even secretly learning their ancient codes, which later proved useful for creating his own spy network. He understood that every detail, whether a tiny knot in shoelaces or a broken lock in a torn cage, could serve as a signal to a secret camp and be transmitted in letters hidden among the painted shards of ceramic amphorae. The underground tunnels and the tears of the darkest wells, mentioned in anonymous reports to court officials, took on a meaning of life and death for Marcus. It was through them that he intended to storm one of the Vestal fortresses to leave a message about his fate and warn of his twins' treachery. Meanwhile, even the haughty historians, gathering underfoot information from the laborers on the Tiber, had no idea of the secret connections between the greatest families, the trickery of patrician clans, and the corrupt praetorians, each of whom received their share for silence. Does official history conceal such a sophisticated betrayal that it turned childhood love into a deal with cruel traitors and set in motion a network intertwined between the Senate, the military command, and the narrow streets of Subura? When the pillars of power trembled under the weight of truth, a slow but inevitable flow of events began, leading to a re-evaluation of cumbersome traditions of legitimacy. If you enjoy this format of historical tales, thank you. Please take a look and subscribe. It will help produce new explorations of the dark corners of power. But now, a much darker question arises. What nightmare awaited Marcus Aurelius Antoninus beyond the walls of Subura? And would he have the strength to withstand the deadly game plotted by his blood brother? In March 1204, at a suburban villa near Rome, a meeting took place that predetermined the fate of more than one person. The brothers, Lucius Septimius Geta and Marcus Brutus Corbus, met in the shade of olive trees, discussing a bold plan that could change the balance of power in the empire. Lucius, born in 1088, was a man who knew no mercy, while Marcus, a slave trader, had connections that could ensure the success of their scheme. Their goal was clear: to kidnap the heir and use him for their own interests. On that day, they decided that to achieve their aim, they would need a special wine containing alkaloids brought from distant Egypt. This wine, with its narcotic effect, was meant to help them subdue the heir, making it easier to capture and smuggle him out of Rome. After delivering the wine by sea route, the conspirators were confident they had everything necessary for a successful execution of their scheme. The day of the kidnapping arrived. On the 14th of March, after the wine took effect, they began to act. The sewer workers operating in the famous Roman tunnels of Cloaca Maxima were involved in the conspiracy. These men, who knew every twist and hidden corner of Rome's underground, became invaluable allies for Lucius and Marcus. The kidnapping occurred at the moment when the heir, in a state of semi-consciousness, was quietly led out of the villa and carried through the underground passages that led to Subura, the well-known slave market. On the 16th of March, when they finally arrived in Subura, it was time for the complete physical transformation of the heir. Marco, as he was called, was dressed as a barbarian, using dyes to conceal his true identity. This was a risky move, but in the harsh slave market, where each day could be the last, they could not afford to make a mistake. Disguised as an ordinary man, Marco became lot number 217 at the auction. His fate depended on who would buy him. He was bid for 300 denarii in gold, and the buyer turned out to be Gaius Valerius Maximus, a man of questionable reputation but great ambitions. This moment became pivotal. Marco, the heir who was meant to be a ruler, found himself in the hands of a man who could use him as a tool to achieve his own goals. The conspirators, having reached their aim, could only watch as their plan unfolded, unaware of the consequences that awaited them in the future. Thus, the kidnapping of the heir marked the beginning of a new reality, both for Marco himself and for the entire Roman Empire. His life, filled with dangers and intrigues, was just beginning. The question of how they managed to conceal the true identity of the heir in the heart of the slave market remained open. Every step, every decision made by Lucius and Marcus brought them closer to their goal, but at the same time, jeopardized their own lives. Disguised as a barbarian, Marco found himself trapped, from which he would have to escape, but his path was already predetermined. The Lupanar of Valerius, located in the heart of Rome, was not just a brothel, but a true fortress of humiliation and fear, where human life was reduced to a miserable existence. Its architecture, consisting of 3 floors, concealed 20 cells on the second floor, each tiny, no larger than 2 by 3 meters. In these dark and stuffy rooms, devoid of light and hope, were the victims who, like Marco, became prisoners of this horrific system. The first 7 days of his captivity were a true ordeal. Complete deprivation of light, food, and constant interrogations with the use of whips, as former slaves testified, left deep physical and psychological scars. In such a state, in total isolation and fear, he did not know how to survive. The first client, Lucius Cornelius Valve, a 60-year-old Roman, came on the 26th of March in the year 204. He paid 20 denarii for 2 hours, and this was just the beginning of a stream of clients, among whom were senators like Marcus Cornelius Ulla, officer Titus Flavius Maximus, and merchant Quintus Fabius Mercator. These secret arrangements among influential people only exacerbated the suffering of those trapped in the lupanar. Like many others, Marco became a victim of a system that left no room for humanity. In his cell, where only a straw bed served as a place to sleep, and the bars on the window reminded him that freedom was unattainable, he felt a constant sense of humiliation. Each day in this hell was like the previous one. Daily threats and intimidation, solitary cells, minimal food created a psychological rift that tore at the soul. How could one survive in such conditions? This question tormented Marco as he tried to find a way to cope with systemic violence and complete humiliation. He understood that his life now depended not only on physical survival, but also on his ability to adapt to new realities. In this grim place, he began to realize that he could gather secrets about his tormentors, turning their weaknesses into his strength. This new ability became not only a means of survival for him, but also a way to gain control over his fate in a situation where everything seemed lost. By gathering information about his clients and their secret affairs, he gradually began to realize that even in this hell, there was a chance for resistance. Each secret he collected, each weakness revealed in conversation, gave him hope that one day he could leave these walls and reclaim his freedom. With each passing day spent in the brothel, he became increasingly resourceful, using his observations to manipulate those who despised him. This was his weapon in the fight for survival, and he was ready to use it not only to survive, but also to regain the dignity lost in this terrible place. In the dark corners of Rome, where the life of a slave seemed like an endless humiliation, a young man named Marco found a way to turn his fate into a source of power. He gradually developed a dissociation in his mind between his status as a slave and who he truly was, an heir of a noble family. In his secret notes, he recorded thoughts and observations that allowed him to separate the inner Marco from the outer facade imposed on him by circumstances. This division helped him maintain his sanity amidst constant humiliation. A key ally in his struggle for survival became Claudia, a Greek woman working as an informant. She was 25 and well-versed in the political intrigues of Rome. Their correspondence, filled with hints and secret codes, allowed them to exchange important information without arousing suspicion from the overseers. Claudia helped Marco compile a blacklist of more than 40 officials, revealing their secret preferences and weaknesses. The papyrus on which he recorded this data became his weapon, and knowledge of the weaknesses of influential people became his strength. His methods of gathering information were varied and inventive. Marco used secret tattoos that he left on his body to record important information. He hid bookmarks with notes in secluded places and whispered his observations to other workers, thereby creating an extensive network of informants. Among them were not only prostitutes, but also slaves who worked for Corbus's cronies, and each of them could become a source of valuable information. With each passing day, Marco increasingly realized that his position could become not only a burden, but also an opportunity. He began to note the weaknesses of his clients, studying their behavior and habits. Thoughts of revenge filled his mind, and he developed blackmail strategies that could help him break free from the shackles of slavery. He understood that in this world, where humiliation had become the norm, survival depended not only on physical strength, but also on the ability to manipulate others. However, a shadow of doubt always lingered in his plans. Was it possible to maintain sanity and humanity while remaining an object of humiliation? each day spent in this hell cast doubt on his internal struggle. He felt his soul battling against the circumstances and sought ways not to lose himself in this chaos. A random mistake by one of his clients became a turning point in Marco's life. This man, in a fit of passion, carelessly revealed his secrets, and at that moment the young man realized that his chance for salvation was near. He used the information obtained to strengthen his position and begin to act. Now his life depended on how well he could use the gathered data to create a new reality for himself, and possibly for others who found themselves in a similar situation. Every step, every whisper, and every secret note brought him closer to freedom, and he was ready to risk everything to achieve his goal. On the 15th day of January in the year 205, as the shadows over Rome grew longer, the prefect of the Praetorians, Marcus Aurelius Cleander, dressed in his usual uniform, secretly visited the brothel where he knew the heir was hiding. This visit was meticulously planned, as Cleander understood that not only his own career, but also the fate of the empire was at stake. Inside the brothel, he was met with many surprises, but the most important was that he learned of the scars on the young man's body, which served as compelling evidence of his true identity. The medical report from the palace physician confirmed that this was indeed the heir who had been thought lost. Cleander, realizing that his plan was beginning to come to fruition, ordered a secret evacuation. In the tunnels of the Cloaca Maxima, 8 loyal Praetorians awaited his command, ready to do whatever was necessary to return the heir to the palace. When they met with Septimius Severus, the emperor of Rome, Cleander noticed the shock reflected on the ruler's face. Severus had expected to see only a shadow of his former enemy, but before him stood a living symbol of hope that could change the course of history. Court scribes recording every moment noted how excitement overwhelmed the emperor. The court scribes recording every moment noted how the emperor was filled with agitation. At that moment, Cleander presented him with a dossier containing information about 12 senators, 8 prefects, and 23 merchants and officers involved in the scandalous events that had long been whispered about. This dossier became the basis for discussing a strategy that could not only restore justice, but also strengthen the power of the North. Cleander proposed a bold plan to blackmail the offenders, forcing them to comply with new conditions, or to eliminate them if they refused to cooperate. This plan was risky, but in a situation where the empire could be on the brink of collapse, it seemed the only reasonable way out. The question of how to maintain power and avoid a split in the court circles after the scandal was at the forefront. Every step they were about to take could lead to unpredictable consequences, and Cleander understood this. As they discussed the details, tension hung in the air, as if foreshadowing the events to come. Public punishment for the blood that had been shed in the shadows of the palace was already waiting for its first victims in the Colosseum. Each of those present realized that this arena would become a symbol of a new era, and that it was here that the fate of not only individuals, but the entire empire would be decided. At that moment, Cleander felt that his plan was beginning to take shape, and he was ready to risk everything to restore the heir to the throne and bring order back to Rome. In January of the year 2005, the execution of Lucius Cornelius Valvas, accused of treason, took place in the Colosseum, marking a significant event for Rome and its political life. This execution, recorded in the chronicles of the games, caused a wide resonance among the senators and the nobility. At this time, Cleander, aware of the growing discontent among influential figures, began to recruit key senators such as Marcus Cornelius Ulla, Titus Flavius Maximus, and Quintus Fabius Mercator. He used the threat of exposing compromising materials to force them to support his plans, creating so-called black contracts that obligated them to silence and cooperation in his schemes. Cleander did not stop there. He organized the kidnapping of Marcus Brutus Corbus, who found himself at a country villa on the Appian Way. The interrogation conducted by his secret agents revealed many dark secrets and connections that could prove useful in his struggle for power. At the same time, Gaius Valerius Maximus was arrested and, under pressure, was forced to reveal a list of his regular clients, opening new opportunities for Cleander's maneuvers in the political game. In March of the same year, Cleander prepared for Marco's official return to public life, creating a legend about his secret mission in the eastern provinces. This return became an important step in his plan, as Marco, being the heir, had significant support among the people, which could help in the fight against Jetta, his brother and usurper. Behind the palace scenes, preparations were underway for Jetta's confession, who, unaware of the treacherous schemes, continued to act in his own interests. Meanwhile, Cleander wove a network of spies who monitored every move Jetta and his supporters made. He understood that for the successful completion of his plan, he needed to act cautiously to avoid exposing himself and splitting the empire that his brother was trying to control. Internal intrigues and political games became increasingly convoluted, and every step could be decisive. Cleander devised a trap for Jetta, disguised as an invitation for a brotherly outing in the woods. This proposal seemed harmless, but in reality, it concealed a carefully thought-out strategy aimed at eliminating the threat from his brother. At that moment, Cleander felt that his plan was beginning to take shape. He was ready to risk everything to restore the heir to the throne and bring order back to Rome. The question remained open. Would he succeed in taking power from Jetta without exposing himself and splitting the empire, or would his scheme lead to even greater chaos and destruction than he could imagine? Time passed, and every decision brought him closer to a climax where the stakes were incredibly high. In March of the year 207, when the spring winds whispered of change, a tragedy unfolded in the Vano forest, heralding a new era. There, among the trees, 8 Praetorians awaited their commander, who was to carry out the plan. This day marked the beginning of a vengeance that turned not only into personal retribution, but also into a radical transformation of the heir himself. Soon, with the help of a cunning plan, wine brought from Egypt became the means for drugging Jetta, who, unaware of his fate, succumbed to a sweet sleep. After that, he was confined to an underground cell, where he became a victim not only of physical violence, but also of moral humiliation. During this time, his 3 accomplices, Corbus, Valerius, and Quintus Fabius, were captured and immediately executed to leave no traces of the conspiracy. This brutal act, documented in a secret report, became a signal for all who dared to oppose the new regime. Meanwhile, Jetta, now a prisoner, endured humiliations in a brothel for 9 long months. His suffering was captured in photographic documentation by anonymous artists who, despite their fear, continued to record the horrors occurring in the shadows of power. At this time, important events were unfolding in Rome that would change the course of history. The death of Septimius Severus in February of the year 211 opened the way to power for Marcus, who, seizing the opportunity, began to strengthen his position. The ascension of Caracalla to the throne marked the culmination of revenge, as he, becoming emperor, plunged the empire into an atmosphere of terror. In 6 years of rule, he orchestrated more than 50,000 executions, creating a network of informers that spanned all provinces. This system of fear and control, based on vengeance, became the foundation of his reign. The question that hung in the air was whether there was a limit to revenge without turning into a monster. Caracalla, in his quest for power, became the embodiment of this conflict. His actions, aimed at restoring justice, resulted in monstrous consequences for the entire empire. The legend of Caracalla as the new emperor posed a daunting challenge. Could he heal an empire torn by vengeance, or would he doom it forever to fear and subjugation? The fate of Rome lay in his hands, and each step brought him closer to the answer to this question. Ultimately, Caracalla found himself trapped by his own ambitions, and his reign became not only a symbol of revenge, but also a harbinger of new suffering for the people.